Kia ora, and welcome to Without Borders, your fortnightly dose of real people, real conversations, and a little bit of real estate. Hello, I'm William Tatana of T. William Tatana at the Ray White Damerald Group. Now, I've had a rich and colourful career in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And I've met some fantastic and wonderful people along the way who have contributed and shaped me into the person that I am today. I'd like to share those people with you because we can all learn and be better human beings. Without Borders will inform, educate, and entertain you over 20 minutes. Good people have a story to share and a lesson to learn. Today we have Scott Russell with us from Russell Legal. G'day, Scott. How you doing today?
Hey, William. Doing well, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, good, mate.
Okay.
Well, welcome to Without Borders today. Just for the audience, tell us a little bit about your background.
A little bit about my background. Yeah, well, I like to say I've got an adventurous heart but a practical head. I did 4 years law school, then did a year in the US, doing the whole fraternity thing.
As you do.
Which was good. That was my adventurous heart. Then 4 years at Balgully, New Zealand's biggest law firm. Then took a year off and spent 6 months in Africa and 6 months in South America.
Oh, man, my goodness, you're well-travelled.
Yeah. And then spent the GFC working in Hong Kong for some of the big banks, Credit Suisse and those sort of guys. And then went to London, worked as head of litigation for Virgin Media, which was good fun.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good fun with them, yeah.
And then brought a $2,000 car and drove halfway around the world to Mongolia on the way home.
Okay.
And then back here, worked for the government for a while at the Commerce Commission and now started my own thing about 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah, no, very good. And from all our observations, you're doing very well. Yeah, hey, listen, on your travels around the world, tell us about the story one time that you went into Russia and you were trying to get into this nightclub. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a bit of a story. Well, that was a bit of a honeypot. I was sitting in a bar with my friend, and a couple of very beautiful women came over to us, which should have been a big red flag for a start. And they said, "We know this little bar just around the corner. You should come and join us for a drink there." So we said, "Oh, what could go wrong?" So we went around the corner and sat down. I said, "Look, I've only got $20 in my pocket, 20 euros it was, so it'll be a short night, but we'll have a drink and go home." Ordered a beer, and pretty much there was no one else in this bar, so we thought this is a bit dodgy. Had a beer, thought, let's get out of here. Went to leave, and the bartender came over and put the bill down and tried to charge us 700 euros for one beer.
Oh, wow. And
I thought, oh, this is not good. And so I stood up and said, "Look, I'm not a tourist. I've just driven all the way from Mongolia. I know I'm not paying this. You can bugger off, basically."
Yeah.
And so I just said, "Look, take 20, that's it." And walked to the door. The bloody bouncer locked the door and locked us in.
Wow.
So at this stage, I'm running through my head. I'm thinking, oh, what do I do here? And you got these dodgy Russian characters standing at the door saying 700 euros for a beer. And I'm just sitting there going, here's $20, mate. That's all I'm paying. And so I'm thinking, what do I do here? Because me and my mate versus these two Russian guys, you don't really want to get into a fight with them because who knows if they've got knives or guns or whatever. There was a big plate glass window, so it ran through my head for a second to throw a table through the window and run out the window. But then a policeman, just my lucky star, just walked past the door window. So I ran to the window, knocked on the window, and then sort of made the universal gesture from I'm in trouble, like cutting my throat. This guy's trying to kill me. And eventually, the police bust in and arrest these guys. And I have to go down to the police station and give a witness testimony of what they've done to the Russian mafia. So I said, I'll do that if you get me out of the country immediately after this. So the police then went to the hotel, got my bags, and I went to the airport and it was gone. Never go back to Russia again.
So what's the golden rule about pretty women approaching you?
Don't follow a pretty woman anyway.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, listen, one of the things I wanted to ask you today is that why did you, look, there's quite a lot of legal firms in New Zealand and the world. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. One of the questions I want to ask you is that why did you go into business for yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I wanted to, set my own culture, get all the best parts of all the things that I'd learned from different firms and bring it together into one place.
Okay.
And I also thought there's a lot of people doing it out there, but not really doing the job that I thought could be done in the right way.
Right.
And so, I just wanted to do the best job, but also have a good culture and have fun doing it at the same time.
No, you seem to be exude that from what I can see from your company. What's the sort of process that you go through when a client first, because they'll come to you with all different sorts of problems,
exactly,
which they need solutions for. How do you go through a process to assess? Okay, it's either this track or this track we're going to go down.
I think most clients come to me with a problem, but they don't have the structure or the knowledge of the law or the knowledge of how to attack it. So I think the best thing that I bring to the client is a structured way of analysing their problem and setting out what their issues are and the best plan of attack to actually get to where they want to be. Because generally someone comes to me where there's a problem that they don't know how to solve, and I'll get that problem, structure it, and then get the best plan of attack with all the best resources to get them to where they want to be.
On some cases, do you have to have a research assistant to look at different precedents that have been set if that's the solution that you're going down?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a couple of research assistants who work with us who are excellent at tracking down those little tiny cases that you've got to find, that may have happened in 1868 that are the basis for why we're going to win this next case.
When you start a business, who helped you the most?
When I started, I had a strategic partnership with a firm called Adina Thorn Law Firm.
Okay.
And she'd been probably doing it for 6 or 8 years. And she was a friend, and she really helped, actually. Having someone who was in business herself taught me some of the lessons. I mean, some of them I had to learn myself.
Yeah.
And you do the wrong thing sometimes. I think at the start, like a lot of Kiwi businesses, I tried to operate a number 8 wire, and I think do some of the marketing myself and do some of those things. Looking back on it, I would actually probably surround myself with good professionals earlier in the piece,
yes,
rather than trying to do it all myself. But yeah, no, it was a great lesson.
That's a good way of putting it, because we don't know everything when we first start. What do you think is the most valuable lesson that you've learned out when you've started the business and now it's up and running, and you've gathered a number of clientele on that?
I think in terms of how our business has succeeded is do a really good job for every client, and then the business will look after itself, because they will cross-refer you to other people.
Yes.
And then it starts to become a bit like a rolling ball. And the snowball gets bigger and bigger as people refer you out. That's the way it seems to be, because we do a lot of B2B business.
Yes.
It's probably a bit different in B2C market, but in the B2B, word of mouth is key. And probably the other thing in terms of business process is surround yourself with good professionals, like a good marketing professional, a good accountant, a good bookkeeper, and they will really keep your business
keep you going. Yeah.
Together, yeah.
With the number of legal firms we've got out there, I always ask this from every business. Okay, what is your point of difference? And look, people have different areas they specialise in. You got some legal firms that specialise just in trusts or family matters or whatever. What's your point of difference in the market?
Yes, we've got a couple of specialisations. Probably our biggest one is construction. We do probably 50% of our business in construction.
Wow.
And we've got a real specialisation in that area. So that's the technical specialisation that we have. And then in terms of our point of difference, I guess we just really care about the results, which I think a lot of firms sort of often just write it in and do the work, but they don't care as much as we do about.
What's the name of the? Is that like a subsidiary of your Russell Legal? Is it called Access?
Yeah, Access Construction Law.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we were doing so much in the construction industry that we thought we'd start a specific brand, sort of a sister firm, if you will, called Access Construction Law. And that's really growing at a big rate at the moment. because there's just so much need for support and need for good advice in the construction industry at the moment. It's a bit of a tough time with costs going up and margins being squeezed, and the supply chains and delays and all sorts of issues.
From the clients that you've seen from the construction industry, would you be able to say name maybe three things that are common to maybe all the clients you've seen? Like have they checked their actual contract, like particularly as a subcontractor, or terms of trade, or something like? What's the three things that you would say?
It's a good question. Yeah, having a good contract for a start is really key. A lot of clients we have don't sort of spend much time looking at the contract at all, which is completely normal in any industry, really. They see a job, get the job, and then do the job.
Right.
And that works well most of the time. It's just when things go wrong and they come back to the contract and go, oh, that's not such a good contract. And that in the building industry is happening more and more often now, because there's variations or there's delays or there's issues in the building industry that come up. And you go back to the contract and you realise, oh, I've got no protections whatsoever in this contract.
Right.
So it's not hard to do, but most people just skip the step of getting a lawyer to check their contract to make sure they've got the protections in there.
Okay. And what would be the worst case scenario that you've ever seen so far?
The worst case is when essentially, and this actually happens more often than people think. You start a project. The contract says you're going to build this house for $150,000.
Yep.
Well, that's actually way too cheap. Probably
example.
But during the build, the owner makes all these changes, which are variations to the contract. Yep. Yeah. Now, in the contract, it says to accept a variation, it'll have to be written and it has to be signed off.
Yep.
But the owner just does it informally. And as the builder, you just say, okay, I'll do this for you. You get to the end, and the actual cost is like $600,000 or $700,000, and then the owner's lawyer says, well, you haven't actually done any of these variations formally, so we're not going to pay you any of this extra $200,000. And under the contract, you're in real trouble because you haven't followed the procedures, or you haven't got the proper protections, or you haven't got the proper variation clauses in your contract.
Right.
So we see that a lot, and that becomes a real issue if you haven't actually got a good contract.
Would you advise also anybody in the construction industry, even if somebody's given you a verbal direction, in other words, an order, would you have obviously paperwork, or even a simple email confirming back to them, you've instructed me on this is how much it's going to cost. Exactly. So you've got a paper trail.
That's absolutely vital. That's all you need. You don't have to get all technical. You don't have to re-sign another contract or do any of that. You just need it in writing.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it might be a good relationship, but when it comes down to paying, that's when the rubber hits the road. And the owner can say, oh, I didn't say that.
Correct.
And it becomes very hard to prove that he did say that.
Yeah.
But if you get it in writing, just a simple email, even emailing him and saying, this is what you said to me on this day, on the day he said it, and this is why we're going to do it. Then it's in writing, then it's on paper, and it's easy for me to work out at the end.
One of the things that we do, because obviously we're in real estate, sometimes if the owner gives us instructions, we tell them, or we've had to go to the council at a certain time to get a certain piece of information. We will write down the time and the date and the year.
Exactly.
We got this at this particular time, and here's the confirmation of it. It just sorts out a lot of problems.
Yeah. Well, you're a lawyer's dream. Having all that written down in paper saves so many problems.
Now, one of the things that your firm really has come to the fore, and particularly in the media, was the class action that you took against banks. Tell us about the background to that and how that came about, and what you're moving forward from this point.
Yeah, well, everyone likes to take the banks down, doesn't it? They take all our money and they never give us much back. The banks over time, I mean, you've seen all these reports that come out that show all their dodgy behaviour, like lending money to people who are dead and taking all these fees. So when I worked at the Commerce Commission, I mean, you could see all these investigations going through against the banks, and once I left, there was quite a big investigation to a few of the banks that came out maybe a year or two after I left, and I thought, I need to look into this. This does not smell right. So I spent probably a year to 18 months looking into it, making Official Information Act, getting requests, getting the information from the courts. And what I uncovered was an enormous issue that the banks had potentially misled customers and breached consumer protection laws against about 150,000 people. So I managed to, I talked to some litigation funders, and they were very interested in the case. Some from London, some from Australia, some from New Zealand. And I managed to get a consortium together to fund the case, which meant the customers don't have to pay for it. They get the upside. And we're currently, suing the bank on behalf of about 150,000 New Zealanders, trying to get refunds back.
Fantastic. So that's known as a class action, isn't it?
Exactly.
Class action.
Exactly.
So, the funders of these, you say you've got UK, Australia, and they're a consortium of these guys. What's their terms of trade? Because obviously they don't just fund anything. They want to know what's the percentage that you have to say, we are 80% sure we can win this case, we're 85, or what's the percentage?
Yeah, well, you need to get a Queen's Counsel, which is the top barrister, to give opinion saying there's a very good chance that we're going to win this for a start, and they require sort of like 70% chance of winning.
Okay.
And that for a litigation lawyer is very high. You never get above 80% chance. Never. It doesn't go to 100 because it's impossible to be 100% sure of anything.
Of course. Yeah. Well, you're subject still to the court ruling.
Risk. Exactly. So 70% is extremely high chance of winning. And then you go to the funder and you try and negotiate terms with them. So an average funder probably takes 30 to 40% of any win, and the rest goes to the clients, the customers. But in this case, I managed, because it was such a good case and I fought hard for it, I managed to get the funder down to about 16%, 16 to 21%.
That's awesome.
Depending on a number of variables. So we've got a really good deal for the customers and a really good outcome. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the banks in court.
Audience, you need to listen to that. You need to contact Russell Legal for your legal needs. That's a really good advert there. Give us one case which was the most funniest you've ever dealt with.
That's a good question. I think it was probably a recent case where one of my favourite films is The Castle, from the classic Australian film. And it's a lot of lawyers like it because has this bumbling lawyer called Dennis Denudo in it. And in the end he wins, but with a bit of help from a few other people. But he has this famous line in court where he simply refers to the vibe to support his argument rather than any law or any cases. And I came up against a lawyer a little while ago in court who had clearly done no preparation, had done no work, and reminded me of Dennis Denudo to such an extent that he was relying on no precedent, no cases to support his argument. So he made his argument, and I stepped up and said to the court, listen, Your Honour, I submit that my friend appears to be simply relying on the vibe to support his case. And the judge knew exactly what I was talking about and had a wry smile. And in the end, I won the case. So it was
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, Scott, it's been a real pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you very much from Scott Russell from Russell Legal. And we want to see you again because I think you've got some more great stories to tell us on another podcast. I'm sure great. You do.
No, thanks for having me on today. It's been great. Thanks.
No worries. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Without Borders and my special guest today. If you need help on your property journey or to be a guest on the podcast, I'd love to talk to you. Just get in touch with Team William Tatana. .co.nz. Join me in 2 weeks for another episode of Without Borders, William Tatana and Friends.